Hi, welcome to Culinary Capers. I'm David Lee, and we're here at Shell Point again today. Today we're going to play around with crab meat. So one of the things we really love is crab cakes. So I'm going to show you my way of crab cakes. But let me say to you first that we like things kind of mild. So I don't put a lot of spices in mine because I just want the flavor, the mild flavor to stand out. But there's many, many recipes. In fact, some new friends we just met, the Lucinas, who live at the Woodlands, sent me his recipe. And I'm going to include it on the website because people have different preferences. And so he has capers in his, but I don't want capers in mine. And he's also got Old Bay seasoning, which is kind of a classic for many of them. But so I'm going to put his recipe on because he says this is to die for and he loves it his way. And I'm going to share with you now how I do it. So we're going to start with the ingredients. For me, and my simple one, is a pound of lump crab meat, some olive oil, and sometimes I'll saute some olive oil in shallots, but today I'm just going to simplify it and just use the olive oil. 2 eggs. In this recipe, the recipe I'm going to put online says 1 large egg. Unfortunately, I only had medium eggs, and they are smaller, so I'm going to use 2 eggs here today. Some chopped parsley, and I chose to go ahead and chop it up because we want to get to eating the crab cake rather than chopping parsley today. And some mustard, any mustard that you like, except for yellow, I would use. I actually have started to make my own mustard. It turns out to be a lot of fun, and maybe we'll do that recipe one of these days just to show you how fun it can be. And then the most important ingredient, which is not very much, is breadcrumbs. And you can use store-bought breadcrumbs if you want. I happen to like making my own breadcrumbs. People say, oh, I want to keep it simple. Well, I had a half a loaf of bread left over yesterday, so I toasted it, put it in the Cuisinart, or you can do it in the blender. And I've got me a nice big batch. We're only going to use a small amount today, but then I'll put this in the freezer and I'll have it for future uses. And it has much more flavor than the breadcrumbs that you can get. This happens to be the brioche bread, so it's going to have a nice buttery taste to it. I also like sometimes to use the crustier breads too, but I had brioche today, so we're not going to waste any of it. So there you go. So let's get started here. First thing I'm going to do is get my eggs in here. And you're going to get your hands all dirty with this, and then the recipe calls for us to lightly beat the eggs. Okay, we've done that. Now for the crab meat. And you can probably just dump it in here, but when I learned to make crab cakes at a wonderful restaurant in Alexandria, the owner chef always has you go through just to make sure you don't get any shells in here. So I can't remember ever finding any, but if you're in a nice restaurant and you get a piece of shell, you wouldn't like that. So better safe than sorry. It calls for 2 tablespoons of olive oil or melted butter if you want. I'm just using olive oil today just because it's a little easier for showing you. And I happen to, that's 1, and that's 2. Then, and I always keep it in the fridge as long as I can, we want 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. So I kind of like, this is 1/3 cup, so I'm going to just kind of eyeball it. And that's going to be about 1/4 cup. So we got that. We want a tablespoon of our mustard. And that's about a tablespoon. You can put more if you like. And then I'm going to put in about 1/3 cup of my homemade, maybe a heaping, breadcrumbs. And then it calls for 1/4 cup of parsley. And that's about 1/4 of a cup. Once again, you can measure this out as you want. I just don't like to do too much cleanup when I get done. And we're going to make about 6 crab cakes, so I put more salt and pepper than you might think because it's going to make 6 when we're through here. There you go. So now the fun begins, and we're going to mix this together. Now, most recipes call for a lot more filler. And sometimes my crab cakes will fall apart. And most of the crab cakes I see in the market are full of filler. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for crab meat here. So, I've found that a 3-inch piece of PVC pipe, cut about 3/4 inch thick, and here's the PVC pipe. You get it at your Home Depot. That I'm going to make several more of these, and I'm going to make some in different depths for different presentations of things. But anyway, it's a very inexpensive way to get some molds. So I've found that this works the best. So you have a uniform crab cake. Here's one. There's 2. There's 3. We're just going to get 6 out of this. Now, once again, many recipes have so much more filler in them, which holds them together. So these won't hold together very well yet. So what I'm going to do is for about 10 minutes, put them in the freezer and get them nice and cold. Then they're much more workable. So let's put them in the freezer. I'm going to wash my hands off here. Now, let me show you the other secret that I now do that I've discovered. So that's 6 crab cakes, but it's just the 2 of us. So what I have found is this size crab cake will perfectly fit in one of these containers that we get at any of the grocery stores. So what I do is either take some wax paper, or in my case, I got some parchment paper. Either one will do. And when they're when they're cold, they're not going to be totally frozen, but when they get cold and nice and firm, I'll put them in here and just stack them up. And one of these will hold 4. And so when I usually cook dinner for Margie and me, I have 4 to put in the freezer and 2 for our dinner. But at any rate, that way you have them already prepared, and it's a much more economical way of doing it because it's much cheaper to buy the whole pound than it is to buy just 4 or 6 ounces. So now, when you want a crab cake, the way I do them, they're ready ahead of time. So we just reach into the freezer, bring out our frozen crab cakes, and we're just going to cook one today at Loon, and the parchment paper keeps them separated. So we'll put this on the plate, and we'll turn our skillet on. I just wanted to defrost it some to make it easier to cook. And so I'm going to cook it for about 40 seconds. Oh, I did something wrong here. Cook time, 40 seconds at the power level 40. And I've got my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm heating up Mom's cast iron skillet. But you can do this in any skillet, and I left my non-stick one out here. Any skillet will work, but I don't know, I just had to have Mom's skillet and use it here. So I want to put about a tablespoon of butter and about a tablespoon of olive oil in here. So now our crab cake is defrosting, and I've got it on pretty high heat here because I want it to be nice and hot before I cook it. So let's see how this looks. It's still pretty frozen, so I'm going to turn it over. It's thawing out here, and put it back in again for another 30 seconds. And I don't know why I use power level 40%, but I just do. I'd rather thaw it out slowly than start cooking it in the microwave. So we just have to wait for everything to heat up now. We're not going to cook it on the stovetop very long, so I don't have to worry about smoking up the house and getting to meet my neighbors when the fire alarm goes off. Now that's better. It's still a little cold in the middle, but that should do us all right. And you see our butter and olive oil are heating up here. So we'll just put that in there. So we'll put the rest of these away for the next meal. Okay, we'll just have to wait a minute now. Okay, it's been about 4 minutes, and I can see we're getting brown around the edges here, which tells me that we should be nice and brown on the top side. There. That was just a little moisture that spattered up on me there. Now we're going to put this in our oven at 350 degrees for about 15 minutes. Our crab cake has now been in the oven at 350 degrees for about 12 minutes, and we want to get it to 160 degrees internal temperature. With all the mayonnaise and that, I want it to be 160 or above. So let's check it out. And we're 180, so we're in good shape. So I've learned the hard way. I always put my pot over the handle so I don't mistakenly burn myself again. So now, through Dan's magic with the TV, we've got some lettuce and some asparagus, and I've got a lemon vinaigrette. And we'll place this right on there. And there we have lunch for Margie, my crab cake. For a nice quick lunch, my crab cake, a little salad, and there you go. That's crab cakes my way. And I don't think it could be any easier. I have 5 more crab cakes in the freezer, so whenever we want to enjoy them in the next month, I'm ready to go. So I hope you enjoy the recipe and you'll try it, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks now. Bye.